Christ is King! Christ is King!
Let all that you do be done in love. A Christian, when they see their society collapsing around them, doesn't cower or run in fear. A true man, when he sees a challenge, he rises to the challenge. He digs deep within his own soul to find the strength to do what is necessary to meet the challenge in front of him. The tutelage of our Lord Jesus Christ calls us to bear our cross and to suffer in his way.
Should we be even doing apologetics and polemics? That's the question we're asking. Well, obviously, I think I'm speaking to a converted crowd. I'm not going to have to persuade you. So this is mainly for those who are watching this later on. Because there is this purview, this view in the Christian world that we should not be using apologetics and certainly not polemics. Let me give you a little bit of my own story. When I came to London in 1992 with my wife, we came really to not really confront Islam. We were looking for radical Muslims, and we were told that this is the best place on earth for radical Muslims. And boy, did we find that was true. And the reason why is this is the one place on earth where radical Muslims are invited to. There are no restrictions against Islam in this country. You notice that. Every other European country has restrictions, but not Britain. And so they make a beeline, especially to London. And so it was great to be able to come here and to start engaging. And I was told the best place to find these radical Muslims was a place called Speaker's Corner. You're all going to be there on Sunday. Say yes. Just say yes, you're going to come. Sunday is the only place, well, it's the only place on earth where you can say anything you want. It's the bastion of freedom of speech. It's been going for 200 years. And so I started going down to Speaker's Corner, and I was overwhelmed. The first time I went down there, I already had a master's degree in Islam. I had another master's degree in divinity, and I thought I knew everything. I was humiliated. I heard question after question after question that I had never heard before, all to do with Jesus and the Bible. Now, what two better subjects do you want to talk about but those two? But I had no idea how to answer these questions. I had not come across this quality of Muslims. And they were primarily from 3 countries: Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. But all my training had not been in those 3 countries. Though I had grown up, I was born in India. I spent my first 17 years in India. I was born in North India, where all the Muslims are. So I thought I knew what I was talking about. But all my training back in America was for the Arab world. And you will find that almost all the training, isn't this true, in America, is all to do with the Arab world. The Arab-speaking Muslims only make up 15% of all Muslims. 85% of all Muslims do not speak Arabic. And the vast majority of them, well, 600 million of them, come from those 3 countries: India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. So I came down to Speaker's Corner, and I started engaging. There you can see me up there doing these what we call 5-minute debates. It was great fun. I was having a fun time. Well, put it this way. I wasn't on any ladder in 1992. Listen, they don't teach you in homiletics how to get up on a ladder and talk to a hostile crowd and then get beat up. Yes, literally, we got beat up in the 1900s. You don't get that today because suddenly after 9/11, they became a religion of peace. It made it a lot easier for the rest of us. But what was fascinating is I didn't really know about this word polemics. In fact, I don't know how many of you knew this word polemics before you came today. Maybe most of you, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But I didn't know that word existed because there is no school in the world that teaches polemics. For one very good reason. You don't last very long if you use polemics in a Muslim context. So we were just using apologetics as best we could. And when I say we, 5 of us, there was only 5 of us, against hundreds, sometimes thousands of Muslims. And what was fascinating at Speaker's Corner, back in those days, in the beginning, you would have Christians who were there in the morning who should have been in church, but they weren't. They were there instead. And they were always talking about, you must be washed by the blood of the Lamb. And no one understood a word they were saying. And then the homosexuals started showing up. And then came the socialists. And then came the national, or the Nation of Islam would show up. But then about 3 o'clock, the Muslims started showing up. And once the Muslims started showing up, everybody else left, except for the 5 of us. And we were surrounded, and we were dominated. Back then, every Muslim leader had a ladder, so there may be about 10 to 15 ladders on any given day. You won't see ladders there today, or next Sunday for Muslims. You don't see Muslims on ladders anymore, because we've pretty much shut down the ladders. But that was back in 1992. And the best we could do was get close to the ladders, push our way to the front with all these talibés around every one of the speakers and try to confront the speakers on the ladder. All we were doing was trying to correct them because they were making quote after quote about our Bible, about the person of Jesus Christ, misquoting Scripture, denigrating Jesus Christ, and we would try our best to try to say something, but we really didn't know what to say. And I remember 1995, or was it 1994? Anyways, back 3 years I've been there, there was a man, his name was Abu Sufyan. He was a Trinidadian convert to Islam. He was up on the ladder, and he was absolutely just shooting down Jesus Christ, misquoting him right, left, and center. And I tried to say, no, you've misquoted here, I've got it right here. And he got off the ladder, and he just gave me a punch. Now, he was a professional boxer before he was converted to Islam. When you get punched by a professional boxer, you go out cold. I don't remember what happened after that. But when I came to, the police had come and dragged me out, and I had been surrounded by 60 Muslims kicking me and push and wailing at me. And they said that when they finally came to me, there was a black man laying on top of me, taking my blows for me. I said, well, where is he? They don't know. He just disappeared. That's Harry, my black angel. That was 1995. And the police says, don't you ever do that again. I said, what do you mean don't do it? Don't you ever get beaten up like that? And I had blood on me. I was bruised. My glasses were broken. They said, don't you ever do that again. I said, what do you mean? This is Speaker's Corner. This is the one place we can do it. They said, okay, get up on a ladder then. You be on a ladder so we can see you at all times. Now, I didn't want to get up on a ladder. I don't feel comfortable being on a ladder. I didn't back in 1995. How many of you feel comfortable getting up on a ladder and being the only one, the only Christian voice? But I got up on a ladder. And I made mistake after mistake until suddenly there was this small voice at the base of my ladder. He said, why don't you use this? Why don't you use that? So I looked down, and he was there. This is Paul Blackham. This is before he got his doctorate. Paul was getting his doctorate at King's College, right? And you were finding that the best place to try out your theology, because he is an expert. In fact, your doctorate is on the early church fathers, where all these controversies were created. All the controversies on the Trinity, on the divinity of Jesus, which I knew nothing about, he knew everything. So he just stood next to my ladder and said, here's the answer. Here's the answer. So I just became his mouthpiece. And that's why we have been best friends for many years. That was 1995 when you started coming down. To basically try what he was learning in school, to try and see how it would be practically applied. What better place to do that than Speaker's Corner? And since then he has got his doctorate, and now you've been in how many different churches have you been in? Quite a few. In a lot of them in Muslim areas, and that's why we go to him, because he has, I don't know of anybody that knows how to defend the Trinity, the divinity of Jesus, not only in the New Testament, but in the Old Testament, especially in the Old Testament. And that's why he's such a great scholar to have on hand. But that's when we started, and I came across Beth. Beth and I started in 2000. She came down. I don't remember why you came down, but you were there, and you saw us on the ladder. It was at a Mahajudun rally. And that was 2000, it was 1999 maybe. No, it was 1999. I did a debate with Sheikh Umar Bakri Muhammad, and you were at the debate. Remember that? It was on the Khilafah versus the Kingdom of God. And so she wanted to check us out and find out why we were sitting there confronting Muslims. At that time, we did know what polemics was. We did know what polemics was. We learned it very quickly because I went to this course here, Dr. Gerald Hotting. Dr. Gerald Hotting is one of the last of the revisionist scholars who was teaching there at the University of London and School of Oriental and African Studies. And I was there in his class. It was on the origins of Islam. So this is 1994. And as I was hearing what he said the very first day of class, he said things like this. Do you know we don't know anything about Muhammad in the 7th century? We can't find any reference to him in the 7th century. And the first biography we have of him, it does not appear to the 9th century. That we have no knowledge of any mosque facing Mecca. In fact, we can't even find this place called Mecca. And if you look at the Dome of the Rock, that huge building that was built in 691 by Abdul Malik, there in Jerusalem, it has no Qibla. I'd never heard this before. And I said, hold on a minute, this is amazing stuff. And there were about 50 students in the class, 25 of them were Muslim students. And within the first 2 weeks, as he was going through this material, within the first 2 weeks, one student after another got up, slammed the door, yelled at him a terrible name, and left the class. He lost half his students within 2 weeks because of this new material. And I looked at that, and I said, these guys have no response for this. I'd never heard this kind of polemic before. So I started taking it down to Speaker's Corner. Boy, did I get beat up. It was no fun. Somebody filmed me down there. Remember these big old VHS? Remember those VHS? For those of you who have gray hair, you're saying yes. For the rest of you, you don't know what we're talking about. But though they had those VHS, and they were selling them, one of them in a store, and one of the students in Dr. Hotting's class bought that VHS, and it was a video of me introducing this material on the ladder at Speaker's Corner. No, I wasn't on the ladder. Yeah, I was on the ladder. And Dr. Hatun called me into his office, and he was angry. He said, what in the world are you doing, taking this down to a place like Speaker's Corner? He says, I demand you don't do that again. You must stop that. I said, hold on a minute, Dr. Hatun. You teach us this material in the comfort of the university. I said, this material needs to go outside the university. Muslims need to hear it. Look and see, you lost all your Muslims in your class. Why do you think you lost all these Muslims? Because they had no response to what you were saying. You were basically saying there was no Muhammad, there was no Mecca. You were basically saying if there's no Muhammad, if there's no Mecca, if there is no Quran, then there is no Islam. And you're sitting here and want to keep it in the confines of a university? I'm field testing this for you every Sunday. That's called peer review. And I get peer reviewed within seconds. You write an article, it may take 2 years before you get an article that starts to dispute you. I'm doing you a favor. I'm getting beat up, not you. I'm taking the blows. He said, you are not to do this again. I said, listen, once you teach it, it's mine. Once you give it to me, you no longer own it. You don't have a choice. And that's what we're doing these 3 days. We're taking what we've learned, we're taking what we have researched, and we're going to be giving it to you. But not every Christian was happy with this. First of all, the Muslims were quite unhappy, and they realized they couldn't answer it. So they got this guy named Dr. Jamal Badawi. Anybody remember who Dr. Jamal Badawi is? You have to be pretty old to know who I'm talking about. Okay, just a few gray hairs know who I am talking about. In the 1990s, this is the man that wrote the 300 video series just on the Quran. And he was considered to be the world's expert in the English language on the Quran. And he lives in Halifax, teaches in Halifax, but he had been in Malaysia, was flying back, was going to stop in London, and his disciples came to me and said, would you debate him at Cambridge University? I said, yeah, let's try it. I've never tried and done a debate before, so let's do so. So he and I had a 2-hour debate at Trinity College in Cambridge University. There were about 300 people in the audience. And I gave 10 historical challenges to Dr. Badawi. At the end, when it came his time, he looked at me. He had never heard these challenges before, many of them from Dr. Gerald Hotting and Dr. Patricia Corona out of Denmark. And he turned to me, he says, I can't answer any of these. There's no way I could answer them. But the absence of evidence, because everything you're talking about is based on silence. 200 and 300 years of silence. However, just because we don't have the evidence, the absence of evidence does not prove the evidence of absence, which is true. The absence of evidence does not prove the evidence of absence. At some point, he said, we will find the evidence. We just haven't found it yet. It's taken us 1,400 years. We still can't find it. Nonetheless, give us another 1,400 years. We will find it. And that's where I was stuck in 1995 at this debate in Cambridge University. Well, the Christians came to me, and they were upset too. And they said, we want you to have an internal debate. So Colin Chapman, who was kind of responsible for the Islamic work in the Anglican Church at that time, had me go to Selly Oaks College there in Birmingham and debate Dr. David Marshall. Yes, that's what I looked like with my big radical beard back then. And we debated two subjects. Should we use polemics with Muslims, and should we use historical criticism? This is 1997, folks. 1997, that's almost 30 years ago we had this debate. Only Christians were invited to this debate. Christian academics and missionaries, but anybody that was doing doctoral thesis at that point was invited. So this is only an academic crowd. There were 50 of us who were in the room. Dr. David Marshall and I went for 2 hours. I said yes to both of those. He said no to both of those. They then had a show of hands as to which side they believe won the debate. 25 went with him. 25 went with me. Now, I'm going to ask you, who do you think went with him? The missionaries or the academics with Dr. David Marshall, who has a doctorate from Oxford University on the Qur'an? Or did the missionaries go with him? Absolutely. All the academics went with him, and all the missionaries went with me. And that's where the penny dropped for me, in 1997. This material, this new material, this polemics that we were dealing with is not for academia. Academics can do this. Dr. Peter Riddell, who drove back with me in the car coming back to London, explained it to me. Dr. Peter Riddell says, Jay, you understand, we as academics, we are in an institution, we have a chair to protect, we have an institution to represent. We cannot ask these questions. We dare not, because we have Muslims on staff with us. It would cause huge amount of disarray. We would be asked to leave the institution. Therefore, we do not engage in this kind of work. You, however, you have no chair to protect, and the only institution you represent is Jesus Christ. You have all the freedoms in the world. Folks, we have all the freedoms in the world to ask these questions. We are the only ones that really can use this type of polemics. And yet we aren't. Now, Beth and I, were you on the beginning stage of CRIB, C-R-I-B, Christians Responding to Islam in Britain? Anybody here was from the very beginning? I was one of the founding members. Were you there, Rob? Okay, you can see I'm too old for everybody here. We started a group called CRIB, Christians Responding to Islam in Britain, bringing all the missionaries and all the volunteers and anybody that wanted to engage with Muslims to one place. A lot of times we would go to London School of Theology, and we would do for 3 days what we're doing now. But I was the only one on the whole team and only one at the conference who was engaged with polemics. No one else would touch it. And those conferences are still going, and they get, maybe 100, 120 that go to those conferences? Am I correct? Not too much more than that. We have 300 people that are registered for this conference, almost double that number. But back then, there was only one of us, and then when Beth came and helped me out, there was 2 of us. And then when we had Sarah came and helped us out, then there was 4, 5, because then we had Hatun and others that finally started coming. We were just the lone craft, and I was with myself and 4 other women. Where were the men? I couldn't get men to be engaging with Muslims at this level. Oh, Padvana, you were there. You were helping us out. Again, another woman. The guys just weren't coming forward. Now, obviously, from what I heard, a lot of them had wives that didn't want them to come forward, because the one thing with Muslims, they will punch guys, they won't touch girls, which is good, except inappropriately. I say that, and that is true. That is true. I hate to say it, but girls do get touched inappropriately at Speaker's Corner. And that's why, not today, folks, not Sunday, don't worry. Not since 9/11. Since 9/11, everything has changed. Now Muslims are the religion of peace. And they start acting like religion of peace most of the time. But it was fascinating to me when I came back from those conferences that I was really pushing against the bricks. Nobody really wanted to go on the offense. And I could see why. Because you go on the offense, you do get beat up. You do get harassed. You do get death threats. And the reason why is because we had no real good material to really go on the offense back then. There was no books written on polemics. There was no institution that we could go to. There was no school that could teach it. Only today is there now a school that is teaching it. And it's our school, the MAPC program, Master of Arts in Apologetics and Polemics to Islam. I want everybody to stand up who's part of the MAPC program. Just go ahead and stand up. These are our students, folks. Just look at him here. All the way from Australia he comes. Keep standing. Nigeria. Nick, you're from home. Kristoviches, both of them, they're from United States. We have about 300 students now that are engaged. Sudan and Switzerland, America back there, we have about 300 students. You can go ahead and sit down now. These are the only people that are really engaging on a polemical level who are actually confronting Islam, and we're training them up. And we do it every Monday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time by Zoom. So this is the first time I've ever seen Khan face to face. Isn't that great? He came all the way from Australia just to make sure that I existed. And his wife, his delightful wife. So I'm finding, and I go all over the world and I meet our students. But what's fascinating is they're actually engaging with Muslims face to face. And they're the ones that need this material. We have the luxury here in Britain and in the United States and in Europe. We're not going to get killed for what we're saying. We may get beat up, but we're not going to get killed. In many of these countries, we have students from Malaysia and Indonesia. From Indonesia. She has a death threat on her head. She is our tigress of Indonesia. Get to know her. And she is doing everything that we're doing. She's translating into Indonesian. And so she has to walk a very tight rope. But folks, these are the kind of people we're looking for. These are the kind of people we're looking for. These are Sauls that we're making into Pauls, or Saulines into Paulines. Don't know if that works, but male and female. Sauls into Pauls. Why am I saying that? When you go back to the history of the church and you go back and see what Jesus did, you will notice that he chose 12 disciples. And we talk about the 12 disciples all the time, but we always forget number 13. Number 13. Who was number 13? Saul. Remember, he was a Saul first. Why did he choose Saul when he'd already chosen the other 12? Because Saul was unique. He was a Pharisee, but not just any Pharisee. He was part of the Shammah school. There was the Hillel school and the Shammah school in the first century. And the Hillel school wanted to reform Judaism from within. But the Shammah school over here wanted to eradicate and destroy anything from without. And Saul was a member of that school. Of course, he did use polemics. And he was he was right there when Stephen was being stoned, holding the clothes of those who were doing the stoning. He was on his way to Damascus to bring the Christians back in chains, if need be, and to kill them. God needed a man like that. Because this is a man who knew his scriptures. This is a man who knew his theology. This is a man who knew his philosophy. He could argue with the Epicureans and the Stoics there in the Areopagus. He could go toe-to-toe with them. He didn't have that amongst the first 12. He needed a Saul to become a Paul. And when he became Paul, look and see what he did. All you need to do is open up to Acts chapter 15 to 19. Just read those 4 chapters. Not right now. It'll take too long. But notice where he went. And in what he did whenever he went to a new city. In Laodicea, Cappadocia, in Berea, in Ephesus. Every city he went right into the synagogue. He never made any relationships. There was no friendship, evangelism. He went right into the synagogue uninvited. He probably didn't even know the man he was going to talk to. And he went right up to the Pharisee and he confronted the Pharisee with what they had done to the Messiah. That's called polemics, folks. Oh, they reacted. Some pushed him out. Others threw him into prison. He was beaten in prison. Twice he was almost stoned to death outside the city walls. Once he came to, he just brushed himself off and went to the next city and did it all over again. And everywhere he went, he started churches. Starts with polemics and then uses apologetics to defend what he already knew. Isn't that interesting? He always started with polemics. Why aren't we doing that today? Well, I know one person that does that. Her name's Hatun Tash. She is supposed to be here. She can't come. She is not permitted. Hatun Tash, I met her, and Beth and I, we had her on our team back in 2013, 2014, I can't remember the year, something like that. We had her on our team, and she had come from Turkey, had to leave Turkey. I won't give you her whole story. You probably all know it anyways. Came to Oxford, and she was my student at OCA, Oxford Center for Christian Apologetics, and she thought I was arrogant because I come across as arrogant. Wanted nothing to do with me, but then I said to her, to the whole class, I said, every Sunday I'm at a place called Speaker's Corner. It's only an hour's train ride. Why don't you come on down? So she came down in 2012, 2013, saw what we were doing on the ladder, and she never stopped coming. She fell in love with Speaker's Corner. And so she started coming in about 2013, 2014. She started getting up on the ladder with me. And the two of us started working as a team, tag team. I'd been doing that a lot with Beth and with Sarah, but mostly with Beth. And now I got a Muslim who was a Saul who'd become a Paul. And if any of you know her story, she goes from mosque to mosque to mosque uninvited. She never asks permission. She just walks right in. She's been to 400 mosques around London. 400 mosques. How many of you have been to mosques all on your own? She always goes alone. No one will go with her. A few of you, God bless you. Keep it up. She's been beaten up. In 2016, she came into the workshop. We had the High Park Christian Fellowship workshop there at All Souls, Langham Place, and we would always do that before we went out to Speaker's Corner. And one day she came in on crutches, and she had a cast on her leg. She was all bandaged here, and she had a big neck brace, and she was sweating profusely. And I said, Hatun, what in the world happened? She said, don't talk about it, don't worry. I said, Hatun, get back to the hospital. She was sweating so much because her body was trying to heal. She should not have been out of the hospital. She said, no, we're getting back up on the ladder today. I said, what had happened? Here she had been in a mosque, not too far, just outside of London. And what she would do is she would bring a bag full of Qur'ans. Not one, not two, 30 different Qur'ans. No two are alike. These are the Qira'at argument. She was the one that found those Qur'ans. She was the first one that introduced them to the world. She was the one that actually brought them down to Speaker's Corner. And how many were here on that day when we held them up for the whole world to see? Just put your hands up. You were all there. And you're all being filmed, and you're all on film. As we held up those, at that time there was only 26. She was missing 4. That was the first time anybody in the world knew that there was not one Quran. There was actually 26 different Qurans, all because of that 5'2" woman named Hatun Tash. She had taken these 30 Qurans into this one mosque not too far from here, and 5 men jumped her. They broke her leg. They broke 3 ribs. They took her outside, put a rope around a tree, and put it around her neck, and were just in the process of hanging her when she was able to get into her pocket and push the rape alarm that she had there. And right next door were some Polish men who were having a worship service. They came running out, and they saved her life. They saved her life. And because of that, she was able to come to the workshop and get up on the ladder that next Sunday. And she continued to do so for the next 6 weeks. You can see, go up on Pfander Films and look at those. She's there on the ladder. You won't even notice that she is all battered and bruised. You'll see a scarf around her neck hiding the neck piece, the neck brace. But she is a Saul who has become a Paul. I remember when she came in that day, I said, why in the world are you doing this? You know they're going to kill you. And she said, well, it's all your fault. I said, why? You told me to read Acts chapter 15 to 19. And I'm just doing what he did. I'm just doing what Paul did. Instead of going to synagogue, I'm going to mosque, to mosque, to mosque. Uninvited. And look how he got beat up. I'm getting beat up just like him. Look how he got harassed. Look how he got death threats. I'm getting the same. It's no difference for me as it is for Paul. And she said, by the way, why don't you read Matthew 10? Why don't you go back and just read Matthew 10, Jay? You told us to do that. And Matthew 10 is the commissioning of the 12 disciples. If any of you are pastors, you can do this as next Sunday. Go ahead and teach Matthew 10. It's a great chapter. He's commissioning the 12 there. And he's saying to the disciples, I'm sending you out as lamb before wolves. And I can tell you right away what he's saying. If you go in my name, Jesus says, you're going to be hated. How many of you have been hated for Christ's name? Go ahead, raise your hands. You should all have your hands raised. If you go in my name, you will be persecuted. How many of you have been persecuted for Christ's name? If you go in my name, you will be in prison. How many of you have been put in prison? Not too many. One. Wow, that's right. You couldn't even get here because of what? He shouldn't even be here because they're not allowing men who've been in prison to come to the UK. Thank God you're here because you're going to be doing a workshop for us. If you go in my name, you will be flogged. How many of you have been flogged or beaten up for Christ's name? A few of you. If you go in my name, they will kill you. Those are the 5 things Jesus promised the disciples when he was commissioning them. Hated, persecuted, jailed, flogged, killed. They're right there, folks. Matthew 10. When you get to verse 34, he said, for I have not come to bring peace. I have come to bring the sword, to set father against son and mother against daughter. Folks, that's not the sword we're to use. That's the sword they're going to use against us. The sword's going to be against us. And it's going to come from within your own family. I can't think of a better definition of a convert to Islam right there. Christ was saying, this is what's going to happen in the Muslim world. It's the Muslim. And look at Parvana. You're an example of that. Ask any MBB if they have not been harassed and had the sword against them. Every MBB we know has had that. It's going to happen within your own family. Verse 38, he who is not worthy to, or not willing to bear my cross is not worthy to be my disciple. If we're not willing to be harassed, if we're not willing to be persecuted, if we're not willing to be, yes, flogged and jailed, and yes, even killed, we're not worthy to be his disciple, folks. That's the commissioning of the 12. If that's their commission, that's my commission. And Hatun takes that seriously. That's why she can't be with us today. Now, there are many more that are becoming like that. And that's why those of us who do not come from a Muslim background, who do not have that problem, and of course those of us who have the luxury of growing up in this country and luxury of growing up with the freedoms we do have, we must make sure that those freedoms don't get lost. But the only way to do that is to go on the offense. We've got to start going on the offense. Now the reason we put this entire conference together was because Bob and I, who do not think alike, Bob is anything but a pacifist, I am a pacifist. Bob and I, we almost go to blows on this. He, not me. Yet we work together. Why? Because we have the common goal, and that is to shut Islam down. Islam is the only religion in the world that is growing as fast as it is. There is no other religion that is growing as fast as Islam in sheer numbers. It will be the largest religion in the world in just 20 years. It will surpass Christianity as the largest religion. Most of us think that Islam is over there. in the Middle East, in India and Pakistan and Bangladesh. You all know, I can see you're shaking your head, it's no longer over there, it's here in a very big way. When I'm in America, they still think it's over there. In many respects, it really hasn't come to America yet. Not like it's come to this country. Not like it's come here. And you are on the brink of just acquiescing to Islam on every field, in every area. That's why we were here for 25 years, to help to stop Islam. When I started working in the Islamic world was 1983, so you can see I'm pretty old. And at that time, there were 800 million Muslims. Huge number. You can't compute that. I was at a conference like this, not this big, on Islam in Philadelphia. My wife was with me, and we were sitting there listening to Dr. Harvey Kahn. And he said, 800 million Muslims. So I just kind of didn't listen, because how could you compute such a huge number? But then he said that there were only 1,500 missionaries working amongst this 800 million, and that 1,500 only made up 2% of all missionaries. I remember turning to my wife and said, what in the world are we doing wrong? And that was my call, folks. I didn't have a Pauline call. I had two numbers that slapped me in the face. 1,500, 2%. 2%. We're sending only 2% of all our missionaries to the fastest growing religion, the religion that is hounding us, the religion that is harassing us, the one religion that is confronting us at our very foundations. It is only the Muslims that are really confronting the person of Jesus Christ. They're really only confronting our scriptures. Oh, the atheists do it to a little bit, but really it is Islam that is our biggest foe. And we're only sending 2%. And almost all of them are doing what we call friendship evangelism. There's nothing wrong with friendship evangelism. You've got to make friends. The problem is, how many people do you bring through? And how do you stop Islam? By making a friend here, and a friend there, and a friend over here. At some point, we're going to have to go for the jugular. We're going to have to go for the foundations. We're going to have to go for the book, the man, and the place. The book, the Qur'an, the man, Muhammad. And I put the place now called Mecca. That's more for Saturday, so I'm not going to talk about it yet. I turned to my wife and I said, we've got to do something. So we went to our mission board. I'm a missionary. My parents are missionaries. I come from a huge missionary background. My family has been in India since 1913. We've been there for over 100 years. My grandfather's grave is in India. My father and my mother's graves are still, well, of course, they're still in India. Our family has been there. My sister is still there. I don't plan to die in India. But certainly that's the legacy I come from. And India is unique because it is the second largest Muslim country on earth. Did you know that? You don't think of India as being a Muslim country, do you? Because it has 800 million Hindus. But all the northern part of India is Muslim, and that's where I grew up. So I had Muslim roommates, I had Muslim classmates. I was arguing about the Trinity, and I was arguing about the divinity when I was yay high to a grasshopper. I had no other choice because I had Muslim roommates. God bless them. They're the most amazing people on earth. They're my favorite people because they absolutely believe what they're saying. And they wear it on their sleeve. You can't shut them up. The great thing about being in India is being in northern India especially, is that all the Indians, they learn English from the time that they're in junior school. All the education is done in English. Which means that they are much more of a larger force. Their numbers are just humongous. If you just take Pakistan, which does all their education in English, and India, which does all their education in English, and they have to do it in English because you have 30 official languages, 300 unofficial languages. You cannot have textbooks for every language, so they use the one neutral language, the colonial language, which is English, and which means you have 200 million Muslims in Pakistan, another 220 million Muslims in India, and another 195 million in Bangladesh. Add that up together, that's over 600 million Muslims. Show me any other place in the world that has that many Muslims. And they all speak English. That's why they dominate the airwaves. That's why they're all over the internet. Back in 2006, there was a new organization called YouTube that was created in 2005. In 2006, a group of young men came to me. It was called, what was the name of do you remember the name of their organization? It doesn't matter, Quirky Motion. Quirky Motion. They came to me and they said, "Sir, we're internet experts, and we've been going up on the internet on this place called YouTube, and we wanted to see how many videos." Back then, you could only have 15-minute videos. We wanted to see how many videos were up there that were attacking Christianity, and we counted 43,000 videos. And then we wanted to find out how many videos were taking on Islam, and we could only count 17. 17 versus 43,000. They said, "They're way ahead of us, the Muslims." And they said, "No, we can't find anybody that will put their face in front of a camera. You're down at Speaker's Corner every Sunday. Your face is all over the place. Would you mind starting this channel with us? We'll call it," and whatever name you gave. I said, "Well, let's call it Pfander Films, because Dr. Carl Pfander is my hero. Because he was the one in the 1800s that actually did the first munazaras, the first debates in the 1800s. He was the one that actually shut down. He was the first one that actually confronted Muhammad and defended Jesus, confronted the Qur'an and defended the Bible. That's apologetics and polemics simultaneously. In 1854, he was doing this. He wrote a book called Mizan al-Haq, Balance of Truth, that has brought more Muslims to Jesus Christ than any other one book. Mizan al-Haq, Balance of Truth, and he's my hero. Because what he would do, though he had a doctorate from Cambridge University, he was a German speaker, so he spoke 10 languages, he would go down to the marketplaces and debate the Muslims in the marketplaces, and that's where he brought most of his converts. So here is a man who is an academic, but also can get up and debate in the marketplaces. That's why we call it Pfander Center, Pfander Films. I said, "Okay, I'll do it. Let's do it." So we went and I just went to his, and you can go see the earliest ones. They're grainy, they're dark, not well shot. And I'm just sitting on a couch and I'm just answering the best questions they throw at me. They're only 15 minutes long. That was in 2006. So I've been doing this, goodness sakes, almost 20 years. Coming up on 20 years I've been on YouTube. But back then we had no good material. And they realized, and they said, "We need to get this." And I said, "Well, this is probably the best vehicle in the world, because look and see how many people can watch this 24/7. Now, I want everybody that has a YouTube account, stand up right now. Just take a look around you, folks. Almost half the people here are now on YouTube. I was the first in 2006. Dewey has 8 YouTube accounts. God Logic? Put a hand out for God Logic. Probably the most popular one around here. How many subscribers do you have on your account? 350,000 people. Give them a hand. And God Logic, how long have you been on YouTube? I've been there 20 years, and I'm not even a third of what you have. Can you see, folks, YouTube has been a breakthrough for us. It has suddenly taken our message and brought it to the world. And TikTok, that's right, because you're all over TikTok. And she does it in 3 different languages. So it's amazing to see what we've been able to do. Back when it started in 2005 and 2006, we didn't really have the best arguments. That's true, because no one had really written these kind of arguments. But then David Wood came onto the scene. David Wood should be here. He is one of our plenary speakers, but your country won't let him in anymore because he was in prison. Which is the irony, because that's where he met the Lord. In prison. Isn't that interesting? Anthony Rogers should be here as well. One of our best theologians. Anthony and I go all over the world together. We'll be in 5 different conferences this year together. In Italy, and in Canada, United States. But he can't come here either, because he was in prison, where he met the Lord. That's the place to meet the Lord, the prison. Please don't. I'm not asking you to do that. You already know the Lord, all right? Otherwise you wouldn't be here. But what we're finding is that YouTube is probably being the best vehicle, and TikTok, to really get this message out, because it gets everywhere. And I imagine those of you who have I imagine you, God Logic, everywhere you go, people recognize you, right? And they come up and shake your hand, or otherwise they bop you in the face. Yeah, I get it every country I go to. Someone knows me there. And they usually are very polite to begin with until they want to get their 2 cents or their 15 minutes in. But folks, this is why we're getting an enormous amount of new material. And what we're going to do the next 3 days is try to introduce to you some of the best of that material. Now, when Bob and I kind of knocked heads together with Alistair, we decided what we want to do is we wanted to start and we wanted to break it up into 3 different areas. Bob announced those 3 areas, but he didn't help you understand why we announced those 3 areas. Because in polemics now, there are many different sides of polemics. And the 3 areas that he referred to define the 3 areas that we are going to introduce. We did it last year, we're going to do it again this year. The first one today is internal polemics. Internal polemics basically looks at the Qur'an. Where's my Qur'an? I left it. You mean I lost my Qur'an? It's downstairs. It looks at the Qur'an, it opens up the Qur'an, and it reads it. Are you pointing to somewhere? Thank you. By the way, that's Alistair, my adopted son. Alistair is the only reason this event is going so well, because of everything he's done. Alistair now has a degree in divinity. He is now the first one in the world to get a master's degree on Mecca. He will be the world authority on Mecca. Why do you think he's studying Mecca? But Alistair has been a real joy. We adopted him into our family. He came to our door when he was 16 years old on the streets, did not know the Lord at all. And we just brought him into our family. Boy, he was arrogant. He was hard to work with. He was a real recalcitrant, but we really brought him through. And it was really my wife that really brought him through. And also is interesting. I'm going to say something, and I might embarrass Beth on this. But he came down. He had always heard that I was going to a place called Speaker's Corner. And so he wanted to check out why I was there, gone every Sunday. So he came and followed me down there. And, of course, as soon as he came out of the tube stop there at Marble Arch, he could hear my voice. He said, "Jay, I heard you before I saw you. But then when I got close, I saw this big, bright yellow jacket, which is what I always wear down there. And then as I got closer, and I saw all these guys around you. And then I saw these women who were engaging with people on the ground. And I said, this is crazy. What in the world am I doing here?" This is your story, Alice, so you don't mind me telling it. So he went with us afterwards because we always go to Kentucky Fried KFC back then, still today, and we always kind of unpack everything that happened on the day, and we'd break it through and break it down. And so each one of us went and said what we thought, what happened, what was good, what didn't bad. And then Beth came, and she was talking about that she had been touched inappropriately, and it was kind of a hassle, but she still wanted to engage. And Alistair turned to Beth. And he said, "What in the world, why are you doing this? Why are you continuing to come every Sunday, get touched inappropriately, get harassed, harangued? Why do you do this? What's your purpose?" And she just turned and says, "Because we love Muslims." And that just broke his heart. He says, "I've got to start taking Christianity seriously." That was the turning point for him. Folks, that's the reason we do this. Because we love Muslims. We don't do it just to win the debate, which we are. We don't do it just to shut down the other opponent, which some of us do. Really, we do it because we want to bring people home. We love them that much. They are the most worthy people I can find. They're my favorite people because they're just like me. Or maybe I'm just like them. So the first day we're going to look and see what is it that motivates them. And of course, what motivates them is one book. It's called the Qur'an. Which means we're going to take that book, we're going to open it up. Look at this one has been beat up. This one has been stolen 5 times by the Muslims. It is a ramshackle, and it's an embarrassment. Not because of it's been beaten up, it's what it says. And when you look at the pages, and when you look and see what it says, it is full of filth. I'm sorry. There's so much violence in this book. There's so much misogyny in this book. So we take that and we say it openly. We read the references. We look and we unpack them. And then we show the world how irrelevant this book is. And why the Muslims are doing what they're doing. They're not doing it because they have a love for it. They're not doing it because they've been brought up with it. They're doing it because this book says so. And only us as Christians understand that better than anybody else. Because we go back to another book. A bigger book. A better book. I always keep this bigger. I always make sure your Bible's bigger than your Quran, okay? The bigger, the better book. And this is the book we follow. So as Christians, we understand the power of the book more than anybody else. And if you shut down the man in this book, you shut down Christianity, do you not? If you shut down the book and the man inside this book, where else do we go to? Well, we have the Holy Spirit, but the Holy Spirit will bring us right back to this book again. Islam really only has one book. Oh, it has lots of traditions, but those traditions are all about one man. What he said and what he did. What he did, the sirah, what he said, the hadith, the tafsir that unpacks this book, and then the tahriq, which would be the histories. So, if that's all they've got, we can understand that the best way to shut them down is to take the book, open it up, read the pages, show how irrelevant it is, show how inconsistent it is, and show what a terrible model it is for mankind today. That's called internal polemics. But then we look at in the second day, and we undo and look at the cultural problems with Islam, and they are myriad, huge problems all over the world, and we just look and see what they're doing. And that's what Tim's been doing with his book. His book is great, looking at all and seeing how irrelevant Islam just here in Britain, looking at the grooming gangs, unpacking and saying, why is it no one's talking about this? What about this incitement to religious hatred law that almost passed in 2006? How is it that it went all the way to Parliament and lost only by one vote? If that vote had gone through, we could not have this conference here. We could not have Speaker's Corner. We could not confront Muhammad or the Quran. It would be 7 years in prison if that law had gone through and it lost just by one vote. That's how close it came, folks. So that's the cultural polemics that we do on Friday. Beth's going to come and she's going to do a whole plenary just on that, looking at what's happening to women. She got a master's degree in women in Islam. I think you're the only one in the world that has a master's degree, are you? Okay, but they're all following you. Yeah, you had it the first. And that's what important that we have that. We look at that and we unpack it and we use it. And then on Saturday is where we're looking and we're coming across the brand new material. And so one is the internal critique on Thursday, the cultural critique on Friday, and then the external critique on Saturday. So internal, cultural, external. External means the historical critique. Basically saying, what in the world and why are we wasting our time talking about Muhammad if he never existed? Why are we talking about the Quran if there was no Quran? And the reason why they never existed and there was no Quran is because there was no Mecca. If there was no Mecca, then I don't care what Muhammad you find. If he's not from Mecca, he's not the Muhammad of Islam. I don't care what Quran you find, and you're going to find lots of Qurans, especially in the 7th century. Don't stop there. You'll find Qurans in the 6th, 5th, and 4th century because most of the Quran comes from that time period. But not from Mecca, not from the Hijaz, not from Central Arabia. Bingo. So that's the third day. And those who are speaking on the third day, we're going to have Chris, you're going to be using this. You're going to be speaking. Mel, right down here. You'll be doing it. Mel is one of my best researchers. This guy is voracious. I can't shut this guy up. He's on the phone with me almost every day. Jay, look what I just found. Look what was sent me. I said, Mel, I'm busy doing it. He's just always bending my ear with all this new material. It's just pouring in because no one's done this before. So that's on the third day. So 3 different forms of polemics. You decide which ones you want to go to. You have the program. We are filming every one of these, both all the plenaries that are here, and then of course the workshops that are elsewhere. Now we do need to stop. I see my time's up, so I'm going to stop there, and we're going to let you now start going to the workshops.